Hey folks, and welcome to another recorded video here at West Yorkshire Retro Gamer. I've held back a little bit in recent times about the current saga going on at Leeds United. I've watched a lot of opinions from a lot of different Leeds United YouTubers. And obviously obtained my own opinions about what's going on. It's not good, and that's putting it politely. We are in a very, very difficult position right now. Let's stick with some basics. So let's start with the matches that we've played so far. The draw against Cardiff. Second half showed a bit of grit and determination after a couple of defensive errors led to the Cardiff goals. Majority of the match dominated by Leeds. Over 20 shots attempted on goal. I think it was about 7 on target, something like that. Couple of goals scored, and the only attempts that Cardiff had in the entire match totalled about 3, and they scored 2 of them. That's my cat's tail, if you're wondering why the camera just went temporarily black. So, in essence, a point gained from a losing position. And with certain elements of positives going forward. You know, there was a number of players who played quite well, and the brand of football that the team was trying to play, you know, was decent enough on the eye. It was just down to a couple of defensive mistakes that we didn't get the win. Moving on to the Shrewsbury Cup game. Relatively professional performance in the end. We got the win, got ourselves into the next round of the cup. This was with a few player changes from the Cardiff game. A couple of them worked out quite well, a couple of them not so good, and a couple of them probably need to go back to the drawing board in terms of their individual efforts and performances. And then the Birmingham match. That Birmingham match had 0-0 written all over it, right up until we conceded a penalty, of which Birmingham scored, resulting in a 1-0 loss. Defensively, reasonably solid, apart from the obvious mistake of conceding the penalty, but absolutely nothing up front. Nothing. Nothing to suggest to me that the strike force or attacking 3 or 4 players that we had on the pitch were ever going to do enough to win that game. It was a totally different performance to the Cardiff one, and you could argue as well that it was a relatively different lineup as well. A couple of our more creative forces did not feature, and this became very apparent. This became very, very clear, and even though it's something that most of us knew already, that was the nail in the coffin that basically shouted out to the ownership of Leeds United, we need a prolific striker. Now, you could argue that the service provided to the front man, who against Birmingham for the majority was Gallart, you could argue that the service provided to him was not great. And I will just turn the volume off on my phone, apologies for that. So yeah, you could argue that the service wasn't great. However, when you aren't creating chances, you're not going to score. And if you're not looking like, if there's literally no sign of anything that you're actually going to have a chance of winning the game, at the very least, don't lose it. Because every single point that you gain by the end of that season could be crucial to your final position. We should not have lost that match against Birmingham. Birmingham didn't win because they were great. They won because we made one crucial error in defence. Simple as that. There's no complicated scenario with this. Leeds didn't have a creative number 10 or a physical number 10 who could hold up the ball and lay it off to like a poacher number 9. There was nothing of that. There was no Hernandez type player who could create chances on his own. You can't expect that of Paveda. He's not anywhere near of the same quality. Yes, he's got some flashes of some good touches about him, a little bit of skill, but he's nowhere near got the experience or the know-how of what Hernandez brought to the team back when we were last in the Championship. Now, how many creative sparks there are out there for an affordable price that keep us within the FFP, I don't know. I'm not a professional scout. I can only go off what I watch from other teams, and I don't watch a lot of football outside of Leeds United, to be fair. And then, as I say, if you're not going to at least have a creative number 10 or attacking midfielder, then you need service from the wings to get it into a physical number 10. So someone like maybe Bamford, who, if there was anyone in the current squad who could be classed as a relatively physical number 10 who can hold the ball up and lay it off onto others, Bamford's your man. But he's always, he's injured more than he's fit. Right? So, one feasible option, if it wasn't for the fact that Farke prefers to play with one up top, one feasible option is to get a couple of decent wingers on either side, whip that ball into the box, lay it onto the big dudes, and then, from a central point of view, get it into the number 10 who can hold the ball up, lay it off onto the number 9 who may be able to get a shot away. Now, I'm talking very basic stuff here. We know that football games are, can be more complex than the description I'm giving. But these are some of the basics that you learn in school. These are the basics you learn at grassroots football. Pass and move. Get it out wide. Get the ball into the box. Hold the ball up. Get your number 9 into play. A number 9 can't do it all on his own. A number 9 needs service. We had none of this. Absolutely none of it in that Birmingham match. That hurt equally as much as conceding a very silly penalty. Of which, if you avoid conceding that penalty, we get a draw out of it, which probably, on the balance of play, would have been a fair result for both teams. And the fact that match, that all the focus was on freaking Tom Brady attending his first match as Birmingham owner or whatever the hell's going on there. It should be about the football. It should not be about what they do new owner. Right? Yes, the owner takes credit for, bumping some new money into a club that's been struggling for a while and things like that. I get that. But it should be about the football that's being played on the pitch. You could argue the same about Leeds. We've just been taken over by the 49ers. But that's not taking precedence right now. That, it's not like a celebrity thing. And we've got enough celebrities that have invested on that board. So this should be about the football that's played on the pitch. And the football that was played on the pitch against Birmingham was not good enough. As I say, defensively, we kept out pretty much anything and everything that Birmingham had to offer. And when you look at that Birmingham team sheet, offensively, it didn't look that great. It'll be interesting to see when Birmingham play Cardiff, if they haven't already. It will be interesting to see the end result of that match. Because on one hand, you've got Cardiff who can clearly score goals if they take the chances like they did, but they didn't create all that many, against a Birmingham side who defended reasonably resolutely, but against next to nothing, and provided nothing going forward. I don't know how that match will work out. It might end up being like a 1-1 draw or something. Who knows? This is the Championship. They're extremely unpredictable. So that kind of covers the matches. So 1 draw, 1 win, albeit a cup game against lower opposition, and back to the league with a narrow 1-0 loss. Let's look at the squad, and this is why I've put the squad on screen for you all again. As you can clearly see, the latest change, it's almost like making a substitution really, but not position for position. Talented winger Jack Harrison has gone, out on loan, and Welsh centre-back Joe Roden has come in on loan. Now, there's a couple of things here. Firstly, Everton have been swarming round at our wingers like vultures. They couldn't get Nonto because they couldn't afford him, so they looked at all of our other wingers. Harrison's injured, but they've still taken the risk on getting him because he'll be available after the international break, or something along those lines. Harrison has been injured through pre-season, so he's not even featured pre-season either. In a weird way, you could say that might not be a loss to Farke because he hasn't had a chance to use him in the first place. So, it hasn't affected anything in that regard. Getting Harrison back fit would have been like a new additional player to Daniel Farke because he hasn't had a chance to use him. So Harrison's out the door. He's one I would have liked to have kept, but at the very start of the season, I made it very clear as to which players I felt would stay and which would leave. And Harrison was one that I felt would have probably left on the basis that he is a good player. It's disappointing that he's gone to a club like Everton, who over the last few years have not been very good either. Let's face it, they are not the Everton that was finishing comfortably in the top half of the Premier League, for a number of seasons. They are a club very much like Leeds over the last couple of seasons that have been involved in relegation battles. So, this was something that initially Nonto said he wasn't happy about doing, but then has had a change of heart, probably through his agent, to say, I want to leave, I want to go to Everton. Of which hasn't happened. And so because Everton didn't get Nonto, they've gone for Harrison instead. And if they hadn't got Harrison, they'd have probably gone in for Somerville or for Sinisterra. It would, I genuinely feared for losing all 4 of our quality strikers at the time. Wingers. The only one out of those primary 4 that I thought we would keep would be Somerville. He's still young, he's uncapped at senior level. So, out of the 3, he seemed like the one of... out of those 4... God, I can't get my words out today. Out of those 4, he genuinely seemed like the one that we might be able to keep. As a matter of fact, it wasn't Everton that showed interest in Somerville. The rumours were that it was Crystal Palace. Who, again, they're no great shakes. They're not really pushing for Europe or anything. They'll either be mid-table or they'll be somewhere in the bottom half, unless they have a miraculous season. The problem Leeds have is not being in the Premier League. It's that simple. You know, Leicester and Southampton, the other two teams that came down, have they been able to keep Ward-Prowse at Southampton? No, he's gone to West Ham. Where are West Ham? Premier League. Have Leicester been able to keep Maddison? No. He's gone to Tottenham. Why? Because they're Premier League. It's no great secret. Players of the highest level, once they get a taste of the Premier League, the majority refuse to play in a lower division in England. And if they can't get a move to the Premier League, they'll get a move to the Bundesliga, Serie A, Liga, Eredivisie. Divisions where the money's still going to be decent. La Liga. Neither was one of the big ones that I've forgotten. They will get moves to the top division in another major country, and they'll go and play their trade there. Why not? You don't lose out on money. You get to play at a good level. You might join a club that might be involved in a European competition. So why not? Why would you play in the Championship? Well, I'll tell you why. Because you're the ones who got us here. You are the players that got us relegated. So there should be an obligation for you to fix the mistakes that you made and not leave us in the shit, which is where we are at right now, unfortunately. At the start of the season, I had a little bit of optimism because the players who, it's taken a little while for players to actually eventually leave, in certain cases. The ones who initially left on loan, I weren't bothered about because they weren't right good last season anyway. And the fact that Radrizzani and Orta allowed for these, relegation loan clauses in the contract. I've really thought long and hard about this. Some people are saying that the loan clause was put in to help against FFP. So that if you loan your player out, the wages of that player are not going to financially hinder you against FFP. But then on the flip side, Leicester have sold 2 players for a lot of money. Southampton have sold 2 or 3 players for a lot of money. They have made certain elements of profit on those players. The amounts of money that was spent on bringing those players through in the first place have been well exceeded now by the profit made on the sale of those players. And that then gives them a little bit of money to play with to bring in some other players. And this is not where Leeds United are at. The only players that we could potentially make some significant money on so that we can potentially, bring in a handful of players that might be able to compete at this level are potentially Meslier, because he was bought for about 5 million. And so, even if we sell for 15 million, which would be a cut price for a goalkeeper who, he's only 23. That's young for a goalkeeper. And with the experience he's gained over 100 games for Leeds United. He's experienced for his age. He's a regular in the France under-21s. He's got the potential to be the eventual successor to Lloris in the France first team in a few years' time. So Melié's one. You're then looking at Tyler Adams, who apparently has a 20 million release, sale relegation release clause. And if this is the case, which it seems to be on the basis that Chelsea matched that and then pulled out, and now there's rumours that Bournemouth are meeting it. Tyler Adams, if we sell him for 20 million, I don't think there's a vast amount of profit there. I think Adams was bought for somewhere between 15 and 20, so as a maximum we're looking at around 5 million profit there. Now, okay, for 5 million, look at Ampadu as an example. Signed for 7 million, looks a good player at this level. So we could potentially get another, defender or midfielder. I don't think we can't get a striker that's going to be good enough for 5 million, not at this level. I think you're looking at minimum 10, minimum. And somewhere up in the region of 15 to 20, depending on who you buy. Unless you buy from overseas, and take a risk. After that, then, I'm looking through this squad. Again, you could argue that Nonto, who again was bought for 5 or 6 million, something like that. Again, there's potential to make profit on Nonto. But look at his age. He's 19. He's a full Italy international. If we were selling the Premier League, he would go for 50 million. With those credentials. In the Championship, you're not going to get anything more than half for that. And again, it's a situation where, we shouldn't be in this position. We shouldn't be in a position where we don't have 2 or 3 very saleable assets. And as much as it would hurt to lose certain quality players, how much quality do they genuinely have? They weren't good enough to keep us up. There's only so much that the manager at the time can do. Alright, they went through a number of managers last season which didn't help. You're going from one style to another style to another style. That can't be easy as a player. I accept that. But these players who have gotten us relegated are the ones who have jumped ship. And as I say, in a sense, who can blame them? An opportunity has been put in front of them to leave, to go and play in a senior division elsewhere. The only actual sale that we made was Rodrigo Moreno. But we bought Roddy for about £27 million and sold him for a clause, so again, apparently a clause that was put in the contract of just 3.5 million. That is a whopping loss. If you make a 20 million loss on a player, then something has gone seriously wrong somewhere down the line. Now, you could argue with Roddy that he's 32 years old. He ironically had the best season that he had at Leeds in our relegation season, scoring about 14 goals in the season, which is a pretty it's a pretty decent return, for a striker in the Premier League. If you get someone that can get somewhere in and around 15 goals, in 30 odd games, that's not bad. He possibly still harboured opportunities of getting into the Spain international squad. So that makes me wonder why the hell he went to Qatar. Because he won't get called up playing over there. Not in my opinion, anyway. So he's the only sale we've made. Now, for each of these loan moves, you would imagine that a loan fee would have been included. These players haven't gone on loan for free. I just can't see it. It used to be the case. I mean, when you loan out a young player, to allow them to get game time for the first time in their professional career, there's not normally a loan fee. This is to help. This is to aid the development of a young player, so that when they come back, they might have a chance of them pushing into the first team squad, in some shape or form, on their return. But we're talking about loaning players out who are experienced professionals, experienced players here. Now, I use the word professional. I use that very loosely for some of these that have gone out. And what really annoys me is the fact that a couple of these players actually initially said they wanted to stay and help Leeds fight their way back into the Premier League, only for an offer to come in to trigger whatever clause might be in their damn contract and then jump ship because an opportunity has been put to them. So they might not have initially pushed for a move, but as soon as a move became available, boom, they're gone. And this is the situation we're in. For any of these players that are still on this list that you can see in front of you now, if any of these have got clauses in their contracts, then off they go. That's how it feels right now. Now, a lot of people out there have, a lot of YouTubers have been doing a lot of name calling to some of these people. I've been guilty of it for Cody Dramé because his attitude stinks, if I'm honest. And the thing regarding Dramé is that this has been going on for about 3 seasons now. So this isn't a new thing with Dramé. When Nonto first signed, he looked bright, it looked like he was enjoying his football, he formed a very good friendship with Somerville. He looked like a creative spark. Teams were doubling and tripling up on Nonto because they were fearful about what he can do in the attacking third. And that was a player that was aged at the time just 18 years old. Maybe 19. And ever since, so this is the irony, right? Ever since Marsh left, Nonto has not been able to force his way as a regular in the first 11. And the irony is that Marsh said when he signed Nonto, he wasn't initially ready for the first team. I went to Ellen Mill to watch the under-21s. Bamford had just made his return to fitness, scored a hat-trick. It was against Southampton's under-21s. And that was Nonto's unofficial debut, And he looked good. It looked like he had potential there. And then obviously he was a creative spark. All the pundits were singing his praises, left, right, and centre. What a creative talent and potential talent that Wilfred Nonto is. But with talent and ability comes the requirement that you have the right attitude and that you are going to show that commitment, that teamwork ethic. That means that as well as having individual ability, you actually give a shit about the team. And this is where, a large argument comes in for a lot of these players who have, jumped ship. A lot of these that have jumped ship are players who obviously don't care. And you could argue the fact why should they care? Most of these players that have gone out on loan haven't even been with Leeds United that long. Some of them only been there a season. Half a season in Berber's case. So why should they care about Leeds United? We're just their employer. And they've not been with the club long enough to appreciate the fans, to appreciate the amount of money that they're earning. They're just, there's There's no care in the world about this apart from themselves. A footballer's career as a player, can be as short as 20 years. Sorry, as long as 20 years. It can be as short as 10 depending on how successful you are or lack of success. So again, I get it. The need to play at the highest level for a player is obviously paramount. But if you compare that to the average fan, for example, who earns an extremely modest wage, the amount that we earn per year as a fan could be the amount that they earn in a fucking week. Excuse my bloody French. Now again, this isn't the player's fault. You could go back all the years to Jimmy Hill, who said, "No, we're going to scrap the wage cap," and the powers that be caved in on that one, rather than just simply increasing the cap. They scrapped it. So wages are through the roof. Players live to their means, so if they're getting paid £100,000 per week, you can be sure as hell they're going to bloody spend it. Transfer fees. There should have been a cap on transfer fees. How much players can be sold for and how much they can be bought for. Because then clubs wouldn't be in such a financial mess. So we're kind of veering off topic a little here. So getting back to the current situation at Leeds, we've brought 4 players in. Those being Ethan Ampadu, Joe Rodon, I'm just going through the list here, Sam Byram and Carl Darlow. Ampadu, 7 million, good player at this level, fine, no issues. Looks a decent defensive midfielder. Joe Rodon, we haven't seen enough of him yet to be able to judge him. He's coming on loan. So the fact that he's coming on loan means that there'll be a relatively small loan fee, somewhere between 500k and £1 million, I would imagine. And we get him for the season. Low risk, big centre back. I think that the Rodon transfer or the loan of Rodon was triggered off majorly by the fact that we're losing Cooper for 8 weeks after he got injured on scoring his goal. Is Rodon going to be a good enough replacement for Cooper? Who knows? Sam Byram, to be fair to him, he's come back to the club on a free transfer, been given a 1-year deal. A lot of this is down to his fitness, because his fitness over the last few years has been dodgy. But up to now, he's looked quite fit, and long may that continue. He's looked quite decent. It's so weird to comprehend the idea that Sam Byram is 29, when most of us Leeds fans remember him, being at the club, when he was, so much younger. It's weird seeing him, so close to 30 years old now. But back at the club he is. Andy's currently covering left back, which is not his natural position, but he's doing okay. And for a free transfer, it's low risk, very low risk for Leeds United. His wages aren't going to be through the roof. Byron was literally one of these looking for a chance, and he's been able to obtain a very good chance, coming back to a club that he did do quite well as a kid. And then Carl Darlow, a player who, for most of his career has been a backup, and I think he's a direct replacement for Joe Robles, who again, for most of his Leeds United time, was a backup. Solid enough. If the rumours are true that it was 400k, not a bad buy. What you're going to get for 400k in today's market? A backup goalkeeper with reasonable experience. He's trained at, he's trained at decent clubs, if nothing else, even if he hasn't played a vast amount of games in his career for the age that he's at. The idea of all this basically is that it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. Daniel Farke does not currently have a squad that is either fit enough or big enough in numbers or high enough in quality. At the start of the season, at the very start of pre-season, I was quite optimistic. I thought, you know what, we've just been taken over. The ownership have said that they are going to heavily look at retaining some of the best players that we've got, as well as trying to bring in some good quality players at this level. It was going to be, in their words, an aggressive transfer window. The only aggressiveness I've seen is the aggressiveness of loaning these players out, the ones who failed last season. That's the only signs of aggression that I've seen. The only other signs of aggression has been the aggressiveness of the YouTubers that have put their point across. I'm trying to stay as level-headed and as balanced as I possibly can, but it is so damn difficult. At the end of the day, all the name calling that's been thrown at these players that have gone isn't going to make a shite of a difference, let's face it. It's just fans venting, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. What do you do when you vent your frustration out at an individual? You call them names. You know, that's how it is. That's human nature. As I say, I'm trying to stay as level-headed and as balanced as I possibly can about all this. But I'm starting to get a bit concerned myself. And I have a little bit more patience than some Leeds fans. Some Leeds fans expect things to be done straight away, no messing. You know, the new ownership says aggressive transfer market. You know, we're going to get straight to work on it. We're going to bring players in. Okay, let's see them. We've brought in 4 players. Double that have gone. You know, you could argue that, oh, well, you know, some of these have been replaced by players that have come back to Leeds on, you know, that were on loan last season. You know, we've got players like Charlie Cresswell, who was on loan at Millwall. A 20-year-old centre-back. As potentially good as Charlie is, right, he's still nowhere near the finished article. Right? Next on the list who came back on, you know, from being on loan, Jamie Shackleton. He was also on loan at Millwall. Now, I like Jamie. I think Jamie has a lot to offer this squad. Right? He's versatile, quite quick, quite an intelligent little player. You know, he is a welcome back addition, you know, to the squad. But you know, there's a certain job that Jamie can do for the team. And at the moment, he's been asked to do a certain job, certainly based on the Birmingham game, that is not his natural position. You know, so you can't blame Jamie for that. At least he's trying. Right? At least, you know, the one thing that you will get out of Jamie Shackleton is 100% effort. The next on the list is Daniel James, 25-year-old Welsh winger, one of the quickest players in the division. But when you compare him to the other wingers, he's not got the same quality. Nowhere near. His end product is woeful. You might get 1, possibly 2 good crosses in from Dan James. And if you're lucky, you might get 1 shot on target if you're lucky. You know, and for the amount of money that we have spent a few seasons ago on Dan, and again, not Dan James's fault for the amount of transfer fee. You know, this relates also to Georgie Rutter. You know, these large amounts that have been spent on these players, it's not the players' fault that they have been transferred for the fees that we're talking about. They don't have any influence on the fee. That's down to the clubs. But in the fans' eyes, when when a club spends £20 million, £30 million on a player, they expect an end product in return. Whether that's a goalkeeper or defender that can keep a clean sheet, or whether that's a midfielder or attacker that can either assist or score a goal. That, you know, That is the basics of all this. That is what is the bare minimum Leeds fans expect. Um, at the end of the day, to me, it just feels like the board and the owners maybe didn't quite realise how dodgy the situation is, and Daniel Farke and his management team didn't realise the mammoth task that they've got. I don't blame Farke here. I don't think any Leeds fan blames Farke at this moment in time. He's trying to implement a different style of football onto a new group. It's a new group of players for Daniel. And he's trying to get them to play a certain way. Not massively dissimilar to when we had Bielsa. But you could argue that Bielsa had a better squad back then. And also, you could argue that Bielsa's credentials are higher than Farke's in terms of what he does as a coach. But Farke was still probably the right man for the job at the time, based on his 2 promotions with Norwich. Another loan that came back to us. Ian Poveda. I didn't think that Poveda had any chance whatsoever of featuring in the first team this season. But in the final 2 pre-season games, and in the 2 substitute appearances he made in the league, one in the league and one in the cup, it looked very bright, very, very bright. It looked like he was, he got his hunger back, for playing. Showed all the reasons why we snapped him up as a kid. And, when you look at it on face value, Poveda's, he's 23 like Shackleton now. They're not kids anymore, in footballing terms. So, again, very much like Jamie to a certain extent, Ian needs to show why he's a capable player at this level and needs to put in the performances. Now, Daniel Farke is very aware of this. He's already made a very big point of it because people have said to him, you know what, Poveda's looked good this pre-season, hasn't he? And Farke's response was, yeah, he's done alright. Needs to keep it up now. And that's very true because in that Birmingham match, didn't do very much. Lewis Bain, another player that went out on loan. He's only 20. Went out on loan to a lower league club in Oxford. He's come back and he hasn't featured yet. Not really. So, that's that. Leo Hjelde. Still only 19 years old. Played a lot of left back and a little bit of centre back at Rotherham last season, who, they were in a relegation scrap. And he's still, as I say, he's just 19 years old. He's a Norway under 21. He's been told to play left back when realistically he's a centre back. He's way out of his depth at left back. Joe Gallagher. He was out on loan at Sunderland. He was brought in at Sunderland to partner Ross Stewart. Ross Stewart got injured and Gallagher then had to play on his own up top because they literally did not have another fit striker. Joe doesn't play very well as a one up top. He's best playing with another striker next to him. Does he have potential? Yeah. But that potential ceiling, again, he's 21 now. So he's kind of in that bracket, kind of between the likes of, say, maybe Cresswell or Hilda, but not quite at the the Poveda and the Dan James kind of age scale. And this is the situation that you then get. So that, these players have all been out on loan. They've come back, gained a bit of experience. Are they ready for Leeds United at this level of football? Only time will tell. But the signs so far have not been good. We've got 1 point out of a possible 6. And when you look at the opposition, Cardiff and Birmingham, now we'd have been looking at that on paper. We would have been looking at that on paper and basically thinking that, you know what, we should have beaten both of those. We really should. Because some of the fixtures we've got coming up are not easy. But when you look at it on face value at this moment in time, you have got Luke Ayling, who is not having a good start to the season. Firpo's injured, and I expected Firpo to have gone by now. If he wasn't injured, put it that way. You've got Cooper, who's injured. And if there's one player that you would be guaranteed to see show a load of fight and someone that actually seems to care about the club, Cooper is one of them. He's club captain for a reason. Players voted him to be the captain, not the managers, the players. That's the kind of leadership quality that Liam's got. And at the moment, we lack that on the pitch. Without Cooper on the pitch, we lack that leadership, and that was again was quite apparent against Birmingham. Which ironically, defensively, we looked reasonable. And until conceding the penalty. Bamford injured. We need him fit. He's our only, I say natural goal scorer. I mean, he's oh dear. Right, Pat Bamford. He's had his critics over his time at Leeds. His injury record's rubbish. It's really, really bad. But on the flip side, you can't argue with the number of goals that he's scored when he's been fit. He got 15 goals in the Championship on our promotion season. He got 17 goals in our first season in the Premier League. The guy can obviously score. Yes, he was having a lot of chances created for him, and yes, he was missing a lot, but at least he was scoring them. Every other striker that we've had, have they got near what Bamford was scoring? Apart from Rodrigo, who's not even here now. No. We don't have anyone. Which is why we are crying out for a striker who can score goals and can stay fit. It's why we're crying out for a creative number 10 or an attacking midfielder who can create chances. Because this is the kind of style that Farke is looking for. This is why the club needed to be in a position to possibly consider the likes of Gustavo Hema, the likes of Joel Perreault. Players who have proven themselves at Championship level. Yes, you'd probably have to spend about 30 million quid to get the two of those in. But get ourselves in a financial position where we can. And this is where the club have failed. This is where Radrizzani and Orta are 100% to blame, because they've come up with, they've concocted this whole idea that putting in these loan relegation release clauses was going to be a good idea. That it was going to protect the club against financial ruin if we got relegated. Rodrigo Moreno's wages were the most expensive of anyone in the club at the time, at around £100,000 per week. There was talk of there being around a 50% wage cut for any player involved in our relegation, which again gives players incentive that they want to leave. They've had a taste of those top wages. They've had a taste of the top division. They're not going to drop down to the second division and lose half their wages on top of that. Why would you? If I was on 40 grand for the year, and the company I work for was falling behind its competitors, and all of a sudden they say, right, for the next financial year, you're going to be on 20 grand for the year, not 40 grand. You're going to look for alternative options, aren't you? Because again, people live to their means. The amount of money that they earn, people don't save money anymore. They spend it because you're only on this planet once. You know, it's how it is. So, so this is the situation. Now, look at the average age of this current squad. Joseph, 19, currently injured. Van den Heuvel, 20. Third choice goalkeeper, fourth choice goalkeeper, whatever. Montero, 18. Hjelde, 19. Gallart, 21. Nonto, 19, despite the experience he's gained in his career so far. Bate, 20. Rutter, 21. Gray, 17. 17 years old. Archie Gray, who has been one of our better performers so far. Right? He's making mistakes, which you'd expect. He's 17 years old, but he doesn't look out of place either. And he's showing a lot of these players that are quite a lot older and quite a lot more physical and quite a lot more experienced. He's trying to show how the game should be played. He works his socks off for the team. There might be a little bit of fan bias because he's part of the Grey dynasty. That's understandable. But even with the name that he's got, he still has to perform on the pitch, and his performances are obviously enough to to be in the reckoning for Daniel Farke's squad. Hence why Farke keeps playing him. There's other players that are slightly older than Archie, but they're not getting a look in. JB, Bate, they're all slightly older. Guess what? They're not playing. Archie Gray's playing at the age of 17 years old. Still a kid. Again, look at other players in the squad. Again, JB, just mentioned him, 19. Perkins, 19. Somerville, for all the talent he's got, still only 21. Cresswell, 20. One of our new signings, Ampadu, still only 22, relatively young for a footballer. Relatively. But, quite vastly experienced for his age. When you look at his career so far. Over 40 caps for the Wales first team. Played in England, he's played in Italy. He's played in the top divisions. His dad played. Kwame Ampadu. I remember him playing, I think it was Exeter. He was a vastly experienced League 1 and League 2 player, was Kwame Ampadu. So there's football in that kind of generation as well. Cresswell, another who's got a footballing dad. Richard Cresswell, played as a striker for Leeds for a while. Some of these players have got, they've got parents who have played professional football. So football is in their blood. It's in their know-how. It's been a big part of their life even before they became a professional footballer. How many of us fans would dream of playing for Leeds United or playing for a professional football club? I was one of them. I was never good enough. But guess what? I always dreamed of it. But at the age of 39, there's no way I'm going to be playing now. Something has to be done here. And it has to be done relatively soon, because there is only about 2 weeks remaining of the transfer window. We are in desperate need of another fullback, ideally a left back, so that Sam can then cover right back. Because Ayling at the moment, the only realistic backup is Shackleton, though he's not really a right back, he's a midfielder. Right? I'm not including Dramé in this situation. A, he's injured. B, I don't like his attitude. Right? For me, Dramé's out of the picture. Right? So then, after Luke Ayling, who is clearly struggling this season, he seems a yard off the pace. You know, you don't ever consider getting rid of players like Ayling and Cooper. You know, and Dallas when he gets fit as well. You know, these are players who are going to be really good role models for the younger players in the squad. And when the squad is as young as it is, you need these experienced players. I'm not expecting them to play 46 games this season. You know, probably half of that. But you keep them in the squad because they've experienced what it's like to get out of this division. They've won promotion with Leeds. You know, we can't. You know, we need a fullback. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Charlie Taylor. I'm on the fence with this. My heart is saying that the way that he left Leeds was totally unacceptable. But my brain's telling me there's a good left back there. Probably for a relatively affordable price. Probably won't need to pay anything more than 5 million. I don't think he's getting a look in at Burnley now. So, get him. You know, put aside the rotten advice that he got from his agent. Put aside the fact that he then spouted a load of rubbish and forced his way out of the club. He's garnered a good career for himself. He's become a very decent left back at this level. So why not spend a couple of million to get him back in? More experienced, more know-how. You know, very, very much like Byram. You know, very much like Byram. You know, Taylor and Byram played at the club at the same time. And I know that, you know, most people say don't go back. Well, Byram's actually come back and he's looked quite decent. So why not? We could do a lot worse. Because right now, aside from Byram, we don't have anyone that can play there. Forget Stroud, forget Helder. They are not left backs. So get a flipping full back in so that either Byram can stay at left back or that you get a left back in and then Byram can help at right back. And then between Ayling and Byram, you know, you've got enough cover at right back. Between whoever comes in at left back and again Byram, you've got enough cover at left back. Firpo's not the answer, and when he gets fit, he's got to go. There was rumours that Real Betis wanted him, and for whatever reason the move broke down. And again, Firpo's injury record hasn't been good. You know, so he's out of the picture. You know, and then a striker. Left back and striker. We've been crying out for seasons to get a left back and a striker of good quality. And the club relied on Rodrigo Moreno and Patrick Bamford. Neither with good injury records or good fitness records, whichever way you want to look at it. You know, I just wish that the people who were involved would just show some bloody honesty. You know, the amount of crap that gets banded around by journalists who pretend to be in the know and know nothing, but because people are naive and are stupid enough to actually believe the garbage that is put out there, I don't believe anything until it is shown on the Leeds United official website. So all of these rumours, you know, Leeds are rumoured with about 100 players every bloody transfer window. And do we sign any of them? No. So what are these so-called reliable sources that the likes of Romano keeps coming out with, who's supposed to be in the know? He's supposed to be one of the more reliable ones. He's supposed to be one of the better ones. Then you get really, really naff ones like Football Insider. You don't take them with a pinch of salt, you take them with a truck full of bloody salt. I'm sorry for ranting here, folks, but just look at it another way, right? Was there anything mentioned about us getting Ampadu? No, not to my knowledge. And I follow YouTubers who, like, take Joe at The View, right? He spends a lot of time looking into all of the sources, credible or not credible, in certain cases, and he makes a very strong point as to whether it's come from a credible source or not credible, right? This is what Joe does. He looks at all of the reports, all of the rumours, all of the confirmed news, and puts it into one concise video. And brings out a video nearly every day. You know, the amount of stuff that he covers on his video, and I just think to myself, you know, some of the stuff that comes out is insane. This isn't a knock at Jerry. He's just telling us what everyone else is saying. You know, he's just saying what the likes of Romano say, what the likes of Hayes say, what the likes of Football Insider say. You know, and these are people that are all, you know, varying levels of people that are in the know. But rather than all that, I want the 49ers Enterprises, I want Parag Marathi to come out and say, what the fucking hell is going on? Excuse my French. But either him or that new vice chairman, that Rudy, what's his face? Can't remember his name, and at the moment don't care. Even Angus Kinnear. Come on, Angus. You've featured on the Square Ball before now. That's another one that I've watched before now. Square Ball. You know, they get Phil Hay on there quite frequently now. And they have a, you know, they discuss things Leeds United in a very different way, a very unique way to what anyone else does. You know, the likes of myself and a few others are kind of blunt and straight to the point. Square Ball put a little, well, that's probably why they call themselves a Square Ball. I don't know. They have they go about things a little bit differently and in a different way, shall we say. It's not to everyone's taste. Some people quite like it. Some people think they just beat around the bush and go around in circles and come out with a load of waffle. As I say, this is not, you know, I will not put down another YouTuber because at the end of the day, all YouTubers are just giving their opinions. You know, you've got Joe at the Just Joe Show. Now, you know, he's not necessarily my favourite one out of the bunch, but is he a passionate fan? Yeah, he is. You've got Ollie Ward, you've got Lockie, you've got the fella at Leeds latest, can't remember his name. You know, these are just a few. You know, there's a lot of Leeds United YouTubers out there. And bearing in mind that I just make Leeds United as part of my overall content. You know, I started my page as a gaming streamer, but I just felt like I wanted to branch out and to talk a little bit about my favourite football club, the club that I've supported since I knew what a football was. You know, like all of the other fans of my kind of age and generation, we've been through the ups and downs of the modern era. And at the moment, this is a major, major down. You know, I don't even know how long this video's gone on for. I'm just going to quickly check. Just bear with me 2 seconds because the timer has disappeared on mine for some weird reason. Wow, we're just over the hour mark. Didn't even realise. Okay. Yeah, so this is kind of where it's at, folks. The fact that we've gone over an hour, I was kind of aiming for it to be about a 1 hour video here. So I'll start kind of wrapping things up a little bit. But yeah, at the end of the day, we need some more signings. We've missed out on Hamer. We've missed out on. Well, I don't know whether we have missed out on Pirro. He's still at Swansea. But can we get the financial clout in? Hello, Wendy. Can we get the financial clout in to be able to put in a sizable enough bid to persuade him to come to Leeds? I expected the likes of, Gyökeres and Hamer at Coventry, the likes of Pirro at Swansea, to get Premier League interest. I expected them to get moves to one of the major leagues. Gyökeres has gone to Portugal, which is a decent league, but not a major superpower in comparison to some of the others. I thought he probably, he might have been good enough. He was a good goal scorer. Coventry fans, like Matt and Sophie, Matt SB and Sophie SB, they actually said that Hamer was the better player of the two. Even though Gyökeres was the highest scorer, they said that Hamer created them, more chances. So that combination of having a goal scorer like Gyökeres and a creator like Hamer is what we are crying out for at Leeds. We need a left back. We need a prolific goal scoring striker that can stay fit, and we need a creative number 10 or a creative, attacking midfielder. We really, really need this, and the club has got to find a way to get these in. Just, Wendy, stop knocking the camera, babe. Right, it's like, imagine if the club had actually decided, you know what, we will spend, 30 million on a combination of Pirro and Hamer. We will spend, 5 million on Charlie Taylor. We'll spend 7 million on Ampadu. Let's say, for example, that the club decided to just go all out and spend somewhere between, say, 30 and 50 million quid on bringing in some new players that Daniel Farke would be happy to play and happy to use and happy to develop. Just imagine, right? Because in a short term, that puts us in a position where, guess what? We've actually ended up with a good squad. And then let's say we get promoted. But then the downside is that we then get found out by financial fair play that we've breached the bloody thing. And the worst case scenario is that they'd relegate us again if we got promoted. But let's say for a second that they would not be able to relegate us, but they could either give us a points deduction or a transfer embargo, meaning that we can't buy any new players. Chances are, next season we come straight back down again. Now, rather than us kind of hypothesising as to what is actually factual and what isn't, we need the club's ownership to come out and explain a few things. I like the fact that they kept the transfer of Ampadu quiet, whilst all these other players and all these other defensive midfielders were being banded around. Glenn Kamara at Rangers, for example. He's supposed to be on the radar for God knows how long. Well, guess what? He's still at Rangers. Do I want him? Not really. I don't think he's anything better than average. Is he better than Ampadu? No. Not by a long shot. And Ampadu's about 5 years younger. So for me, Glenn Cameron's not the answer to to add to the midfield. And chances are we're only going to add a midfielder if we end up selling Tyler Adams for 20 million. And that way then, I mean, we might get about 5 million to maybe spend on another, defensive midfielder. But again, I don't get the thing with Adams. He was pictured on the pitch before and after one of the games advising Archie Gray. That's great. I like that. I like it that he's putting his arm around one of the youngest player in the squad, that plays in the same kind of position, and he's there, we assume that it's advice that he's giving him. So, right, this is what I think you should do, keep an eye out for maybe so-and-so on the opposition, and go out there with confidence, play your game. And then at the end of the game, he then put his arm around him and then said, right, this is what, and I'm just assuming here, I can't lip read and I can't, I didn't have any microphone to be able to hear exactly what Tyler was saying to Archie. But it looked like he was giving him advice. Bearing in mind, Tyler is the current USA captain, right? He's the captain of his country. And as you can see there, he's only 24 years old. He's a good age to improve himself as a player, as Tyler. But he's mentoring the likes of Archie, which is great to see. Here's the flip side. Tyler Adams might not be here in 2 weeks' time. He might not even be here by the end of the week. So all that good stuff about Adams still being at the club, all that good stuff about Adams being one of our better players last season, and at one point in this summer said that he wanted to stay. But again, like what we've mentioned on this video already, what has transpired? Clubs have recognised some kind of 20 million release clause in the contract. 20 million in the Premier League is not a massive amount of money for a midfielder. Not huge. Not when you consider the prices that... Like, how does Lavia command such a high price? What's he done? What's he done that was any better than what Phillips did when Phillips was at Leeds United? To command the same fee that Phillips went for in the end. I don't get it. There's obviously a player of potential there. He's a young, he's still relatively young as Lavia from what I can tell. But seriously, the quoting money that was nearly the same amount for what Leicester sold Maddison for. All right, Maddison's at the other end, Maddison's in his late 20s, but still. I just don't get it. I don't get or understand how players' values are so variable and how the likes of Leicester and Southampton have been able to garner so much money from selling just a couple of players, and yet Leeds, when you look at some of the best players that have gone so far or could still go, and because of these dickhead fucking clauses in the contract. Again, excuse my swearing, but I'm so peeved off with the situation. I don't get it. And as I say, I had a certain level of optimism that Leeds would be good enough for the top two this season. If Leeds in the next 2 weeks do not start bringing in some quality, and I don't mean just bringing in a hatful of bloody players like Middlesbrough's done and expecting them to gel straight away. Look at Middlesbrough's start to the season. They've done rubbish. There was predictors that were predicting them to win the league. And they've made a dreadful start. Their start hasn't been any better than Leeds'. And what have Middlesbrough done? The exact opposite to what Leeds have done. They've signed a lot of players. When I did my revised prediction for where teams would finish in the season, I dropped Middlesbrough out of it completely Because I looked at the players they'd signed and I thought, okay, right, they've signed a lot of players, great. But are these players any good? Nobody knows. Because half of the ones who've signed haven't done anything at this kind of level. They signed a bunch of Australians. They might turn out good, but are they going to be good right now? Well, proof is showing that maybe they're not as good as what Middlesbrough initially thought. What if Middlesbrough lose Akpom, who last season was an absolute goal-scoring beast? But Akpom's overall career has not been one where he's been a regular goal-scorer. So again, this is probably why clubs haven't come in to pay. He's had one good season. Does that mean that he's ready to go for 30 million quid because he scores a few goals in one season? No. Clubs have looked at that and they've decided, no, you know what? He's had one good season. Let him do it again. Let him do it again and let's see how good he really is. Then we might pay 20 to 30 million for him. That's how I think clubs have viewed the Akpom situation. And I think he might be injured anyway. Again, I think he's another player that's ended up being injured through pre-season. Anyway, he's Middlesbrough. I don't care. Alright, this is Leeds United. If we don't make promising signings over the next 2 weeks, then when I do my final prediction for where I think teams will finish this season, I'm going to be struggling to keep Leeds in the top 6. And that hurts. It could be argued that maybe this season is going to be like a 2-year project. Signing Daniel Farke as manager and the 49ers having a chance to actually, get used to the situation that we're in terms of financial fair play and all the rest of it that goes with it. Are we looking at a transitional period here? I think we might be. Wendy, down you go, girl. She's huge as that cat. She really is. Blooming massive. Yeah, where do we go with this? I think it's come down to some very basic facts. If we don't get, I would say at least 3 quality players. And when I say quality, I mean quality for the division we're in. I'm not expecting us to sign Lionel Messi, even at the age he's at now. Right? But let's get some players that are of a similar kind of standard to Ethan Ampadu. He's shown so far in the very early stages of his Leeds United career that he's got something about him. The fans need to see this on the pitch. If we were going based solely off his reputation, then Ampadu would have been looked at as being an overpriced flop. But he's not. He's really looking like a promising player. Rodon might end up being a decent centre back. We don't know yet. Byram, he's come back. He's looked pretty decent. He really has. But the question with Byram is his fitness. The club are going to have to look after him and make sure that he stays fit for as many games as possible. Darlow, adequate backup goalkeeper. Now we need quality that can get into that first 11 and show what the hell they're made of. Show what they can do. We're approaching an hour and 20 minutes here, folks. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I think this video has felt a little bit like some of the other YouTubers' videos, that it's just been one big rant, and maybe it has been. We've tried to look at a few different things here about what's going on at Leeds right now, and this is kind of where we're at. Do please give the video a thumbs up on YouTube. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content. There'll be a mixture of football, retro gaming, might include some of my musical or taekwondo exploits, in future videos perhaps, we'll see. There'll be some rankings of games, game music, maybe players that have played for Leeds over the seasons. I've already done a review of some of the worst kits that we've ever had. So there's going to be a whole variety of stuff appearing on the channel. So do please keep an eye out for my live streams. In terms of my live streams, I do live stream on YouTube, Kick, and Facebook. So do please give me a follow on all of those, and hit the notification bell, so that you're notified of all the future content that's coming your way. But thank you very much for. If you've gotten this far, you've done really well. This was a longer video than intended, but yeah, with all of that, there might still be optimism for this season, and let's hope. Let's cross fingers that the club gets it right. We knew that it wasn't going to be a quick fix, but something's got to be done sharpish now over these next 2 weeks. So let's see what happens. In the meantime, folks, have a fantastic day, whatever you're doing. Let's hope that we get a positive result in the next match, which I believe is West Bromwich Albion. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.